Sometimes the most interesting characters are the ones you don't know anything about but just have a great design. When Star Wars was released on May 25th, 1977, we got that in the character of Darth Vader. He only had maybe 8 minutes of screen time and not much dialogue, but his design, coupled with an air of mystery, gave you an iconic character to last throughout time. The more they gave us of Darth Vader and his backstory, the less of a character he became. Well, 6 months after the release of that film, while it was still in theaters, on November 28th of 1977, George Lucas wrote the story treatment for Star Wars Chapter 2, The Empire Strikes Back. Simultaneously, artist Joe Johnston was illustrating designs for the snow troopers that would appear in that story. And artist Ralph McQuarrie was designing the commander of the snow troopers. In January of 1978, Ralph McQuarrie would make a turnaround painting of this commander, which they were now referring to as a Super Trooper. The following month, in February of 1978, Joe Johnston refined the Super Trooper by giving him gadgets in a backpack. And then in April of 1978, George Lucas created the second draft script for The Empire Strikes Back, incorporating this Super Trooper as a standalone bounty hunter character named Boba Fett. And it was at this time he created a story treatment for an animated sequence for the upcoming Star Wars holiday special that would feature this new character. The script written from that story treatment featured a white-suited super trooper on a giant sea dragon who was revealed to be the bounty hunter Boba Fett. And a Joe Johnston illustration of this character was sent to Kenner Toys to start the design of an action figure. And then on June 28th, 1978, the Boba Fett costume was created for a screen test. The suit was worn by assistant film editor Dwayne Dunham. Here is an action figure of that initial prototype costume. And it was at this time that Joe Johnston updated the Boba Fett design to be made in various colors, along with battle damage like a dent in the helmet, braids of hair from his scalped enemies to be hanging from his right shoulder, and behind his left was a wraparound chest cape, reminiscent of the serape worn by Clint Eastwood as the Man with No Name. The new Ralph McQuarrie painting still had Boba in his white armor, but included the helmet dent and the wraparound chest cape. Copies were made of that screen test white costume with a new helmet that included that dent, and one of these sets was sent to Nelvana Studios for storyboarding reference for that animation sequence in the upcoming holiday special. And that's when one of these costumes was painted in multicolors, given battle damage, and worn by optical photography supervisor Bruce Nicholson. And that's when Nelvana was instructed to make Boba Fett's costume in multicolors for that animation sequence. And then on September 24th, 1978, Boba Fett made his first live-action appearance at the San Anselmo Country Fair Day Parade, and the suit was worn by Dwayne Dunham again. Here is an action figure of that first appearance costume. Got the spikes coming out of the boots. You have one red gauntlet, one yellow gauntlet, these colored pouches here. You have the braids. You have this early ear design painted onto the helmet. This dark green, this multicolored jetpack with the rocket launcher. And this is the color scheme that would be used by Kenner Toys to create their action figure. And on November 17th, 1978, Boba Fett made his animated debut on television in the Star Wars Holiday Special. And here is an action figure of that design. Ten days later, on November 27th, 1978, the multicolored and battle-damaged Boba Fett suit was worn to the Kenner offices. Here it was photographed to be used on the blister card packaging and for color design of that action figure. In February of 1979, a carded example of the early rocket-firing Boba Fett action figure was displayed on package at Toy Fair in New York City. Here is an action figure replica of that original rocket-firing design. And as you can see, it has that early color scheme of the one red gauntlet and the one yellow gauntlet. On April 10th of 1979, Boba Fett had his first day of filming for the movie The Empire Strikes Back in a suit worn by actor Jeremy Bulloch. And it was at that time that a mail-away offer for a rocket-firing Boba Fett figure was advertised on the backs of the current Star Wars action figures. Then on August 13th, 1979, the finalized Kenner Boba Fett action figure patent was submitted, and this would no longer feature the rocket-firing mechanism. The following year, on May 21st, 1980, The Empire Strikes Back was released to theaters. And here is an action figure depicting how he actually looked in the film. As you can see, he has 2 green gauntlets and this tan one-shoulder cape, as well as an all-green jetpack. Shortly after that, the Boba Fett action figure was released by Kenner. The rocket no longer fired, and it still featured that early color design. There was also a large 13-inch version of that figure released, as well as this tiny die-cast metal version, all of which feature that early color scheme. When Boba Fett returned on May 25th, 1983 in the movie Return of the Jedi, he had a new color scheme. And you can see it depicted here on this action figure version where he has 2 burgundy gauntlets, as well as a multicolored jetpack and the dark green one-shoulder cape. And many decades later, Boba Fett would return on the Mandalorian television show, as well as his own spin-off show where he would wear a costume depicted on this action figure. So as you can see, he started off all white when he was just being a commander of the snow troopers. So it was a super trooper version of a stormtrooper for Hoth, modified and then tweaked out with gadgets and a rocket pack and everything. Then they started to give him many different colors, a one-shoulder cape. He kept all of these colors for his original action figure designs. When the animated sequence was being made, they were told, put him in different colors. They didn't get the colors quite right, but they have the one-shoulder cape. They have the braids over the shoulder. But when he came out in the movie, they made all of the multicolors mostly green and turned that one-shoulder cape tan. But when they brought him back for his next and final film, they brought back the multicolored jetpack. They changed his gauntlets back, one of them back to the burgundy red color. They didn't make the other one yellow, but he's still got the yellow shoulder pads, knee pads, etc. And they went back to the dark green one-shoulder cape. This is probably the best design you're going to get for the figure, in my opinion. And then in old age, they just gave him a lot more baggy black. That's all. He was a great character because he had a great design and we didn't know anything about him. But when they continued to flesh him out like Darth Vader before him, he became much less than what he once could have been. Until next time.